What's up guys, welcome back to the latest installment of the Street YouTube channel. Now today we're going to be talking about one transfer every team needs summer edition. I done one of these back in January, and some of the players are still relevant, but a lot of them are now updated, and there's new teams in the Premier League this season. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each team, identify one player that can improve that team for the following season, and hopefully boost them on to bigger and better accomplishments, maybe outperform where many people think their expectations lie for the upcoming season. So let's get straight into it, and we're going to start with Arsenal and then go down in ascending order. Let's get it. Here we go then. Right, let's start with Arsenal, and there's only one place to start, and that's with Declan Rice. I think Declan Rice to Arsenal would be an exceptional addition. It's looking increasingly likely, a fee's been agreed, but it's pointless looking elsewhere for a signing with the quality of Declan Rice. Not only did it add quality reinforcement, but the actual quality of the player as well means that Arsenal are going to get a hell of a player, coupled with Havertz, maybe Timber as well for that defensive reinforcement. And I think Arsenal are going to have a good season if they can get Rice over the line. Now, moving on to Aston Villa. I've said for a while that Aston Villa need a winger. Someone that can free up Ollie Watkins down the middle, someone that can play off the left, and I think that player could be Sinisterra from Leeds. Now, they're getting a player from a relegated team, so hopefully the fee wouldn't be an issue there. And I think in Sinisterra's first season in the Prem, picked up a couple of injuries, wasn't able to show his true ability. And if he went to a place like Aston Villa, a very well-run club, a nice stable atmosphere, I think under Unai Emery, Sinisterra and Aston Villa could both get on well, and they could have a high point scoring finish this season, which means coupled with their UEFA Conference League football, which they need reinforcement, it would make sure they have the best team possible for that. So Sinisterra for me would be a great left-wing addition for Aston Villa. Right, now we move on to one of my dark horses for next season, and that is Bournemouth. People would question any other season, why would Bournemouth be your surprise dark horses? You've only got to take a look at their new manager and how he performed at Rayo Vallecano over the last two seasons. Last season they won most possession in the opponent's final third out of everybody in La Liga. He had a 12th and 11th place finish with, I'd say one of the less developed teams in La Liga, and so with those stats, you can obviously see, they've won possession, like I said, the most out of everyone in La Liga in the final third. So you can expect a high pressing attacking style of play, which is completely opposite of what Bournemouth play now. They play with two big number 9s, quite a slow build up style of play. You can imagine he'd come in and completely revolutionise the way that they are playing at the moment, and I think the players would actually buy into what he's trying to do. So with having two big number 9s, I don't think that they're not going to play any of them. So I think that they're going to go big number 9 and then pace around them. So I've gone for the Bournemouth player that I think, or the player I think can improve Bournemouth. I've gone for Rodrigo from Leeds. I think he's a good player to play as that number 10, or off the big number 9 type of player. Can link up play. Obviously, he can score goals. He scored a few goals for Leeds last season. Ultimately, it wasn't enough to keep them up, but his quality shone in that Leeds team. If there was a player that could stand out, it was him, taking over from Bamford, who was injured a lot of that season. Still at a decent age. He's been about a bit. He's been playing in La Liga, Valencia a lot of the time. Moved to Leeds. Done well in this first season. Obviously got relegated, and I think if Bournemouth could pick him up for a decent price, being Spanish, link him with the new coach, you could see him flourish at Bournemouth. And I expect Bournemouth to be comfortably away from that relegation zone next season, mainly because I think the style of play suits the Premier League, fast-paced, attacking football. So I think Rodrigo would be a great addition to that Bournemouth side, and if you're a Bournemouth fan, I think you can be quite optimistic for the upcoming season. Right, now moving on to Brentford. In my January video, I said that due to the possibility of Ivan Toney getting suspended, that they would need a backup striker or another striker to come in and do the job Ivan Toney could do. In that video, I stated that Calvert-Lewin would be a great addition to this team as long as he can get his injuries behind him. He's an exceptional forward, still young, and he could replace Ivan Toney, and he's still my man. If they could bring in if they could bring in Calvert-Lewin to replace Ivan Toney for the first 6 months of the season, and then integrate him once Ivan Toney's back, I think he would be an exceptional player for Brentford if he could stay fit. Now moving on to Brighton. Brighton for me is a funny one because you never ever see them going out and getting that star name. They always like to buy a player, build them up, and turn them into a very good player, like you see with Enciso, like you see with Matoma, or Buonanotte, another one. All these players which weren't really heard of before they moved to the Premier League, before they come to Brighton. They've built them up and turned them into potentially world stars. McAllister's gone, Caicedo's looking to go, so they do need, I know they've brought in James Milner and Mahmoud Dahoud, but they still need another midfielder, I think, because James Milner will not be able to play every game. So I think another midfielder needs to be brought in, someone that they can turn into that star, and I think that player would be Kenny Chukwuemeka from Chelsea. Still 19 years of age, a lot of room for improvement. When he was at Aston Villa, got that move to Chelsea, he's shown signs of a brilliant football player. Obviously he hasn't been able to play for Chelsea very much at all, so if they got him on loan, maybe with an option to buy, obligation to buy at the end of the season, I think that would be an exceptional player to add to Brighton's midfield ranks. And I think if they were able to keep him permanently, maybe Chelsea don't fancy him and he wants to try something new and he wants an attacking, very well balanced team, and he wanted to move to Brighton, he would be an exceptional player, not only now but going forward many years, and he could excel at a team like Brighton. Now on to Burnley. With Burnley, they had obviously a very good season in the Championship last season, but moving back up to the Premier League, Vincent Kompany's first taste of the Premier League as a manager, I just think they'll want that number 9 that can put the ball in the back of the net on a regular basis. I think Barnes and Jay Rodriguez, I think they're a bit past it now to be one of the top players in the Premier League. So I think a number 9 that is able to come in and score those goals would be beneficial for Burnley. And I've gone for a player which might not want to take the step down, but might be forced to. And that would probably be Eddie Nketiah from Arsenal. Now hear me out. Balogun, who was on loan in Liga last season, had an exceptional season and impressed a lot of people. Now he could come in and be the backup to Gabriel Jesus, and most probably will. You know, you can't ignore the goals he scored in Liga at such a young age last season. So for me, that kind of pushes Eddie Nketiah back. You know, he couldn't, other than when Jesus got injured, he couldn't really break into that team. Maybe it's the other way around and they keep Nketiah and allow Balogun to go out on loan or something like that. Either way, either Nketiah or Balogun would be my option for Burnley, but preferably Eddie Nketiah, which gives Balogun that opportunity to be Gabriel Jesus' number 2. Okay, now on to another player that I said in January should move to this club. Move to Chelsea. They are desperate, still desperate, even though they signed Jackson from Villarreal. They are still desperate for that number 9, because ultimately I don't think Jackson will be the player that will rescue Chelsea. I think they still need that very good goal scoring number 9, and I still think from January onto the summer they should go and get Gonçalo Ramos from Benfica, maybe 70-80 million. They've just sold a boatload of players, made 200 odd million back in revenue, and I think that if they went and signed Gonçalo Ramos, he would elevate them back into those European places after that dire season last season, because they've made a lot of wrong decisions in the transfer market in these last 12 months, and I think they need to take the right one in signing Gonçalo Ramos. Moving swiftly on to Crystal Palace. Now, looking at Crystal Palace's squad, I identified a weakness there at the right back position. Now, I know they have 2 players there already in Joel Ward and Nathaniel Klein, but they're both aging, they're not getting any younger, and I think they need a player now to come in, learn off them, a young talent to come in, learn off them, and then take the role going forward. Maybe, if it's not this season, but definitely moving forward next season and the seasons on. Now, that player I've settled on is Livramento from Southampton. I think if Crystal Palace could get him for a decent price, I know many other Premier League and European clubs will be sniffing after him, but if they could get him for a reasonable price, I think he'd be a great addition to this Crystal Palace team, who have experience in developing young talents. So, mainly like Wilfried Zaha, Aaron Wan-Bissaka of recent times. So if they got in Livramento, who is only 20 years of age, he would be an exceptional addition to this Crystal Palace team, and I think he could either go on and be sold for a greater fee in a few years' time, or stay at Palace and become a club legend. But he would be a great addition for that side if they could get him in. Now moving on to Everton. With Everton, everybody knows that they have struggles at the top end of the field. So I've gone for a winger in their team, and the winger I've settled on is Harvey Barnes from Leicester. I think Harvey Barnes is too good to be playing in the Championship with Leicester, and I know Tottenham were sniffing about him with James Maddison, but obviously they've signed James Maddison now, and Harvey Barnes is still available. And now, if Harvey Barnes just wants to play in the Premier League, I think Everton would be a good move for him. Looking at their team and their style of play, under Sean Dyche, they're gonna be sitting back and playing on the counter attack, and I think Harvey Barnes is a good player to come in, improve that team, and would be great at allowing that team to then transition into the counter-attack state, and hopefully he'll get a lot of goals for Everton, getting them away from that dreaded relegation zone, for next season, because a team like Everton doesn't deserve to be there. It's obviously been poorly managed, and the transfers that they've brought in years gone by, mainly recent years, haven't been up to scratch. They've paid big money for average players, and I think now is the time for them to stabilise, bring in Harvey Barnes for, I'd say 25-30 million would be an appropriate price tag, and if they could get him in, he would definitely improve that team. On to Fulham. With Fulham, I think that they, another team that needs a winger type player, one of those wide men who can come in and run with the ball, take players on, and set up ultimately Aleksandar Mitrovic for the majority of their goals, like it was for this season. And I think that Fulham could take advantage of another club's downfall, if you wish, and I would say that they could take advantage of Sevilla's situation. They're £90 million in debt. They've transfer listed every one of their players, and I think if they went and got Eric Lamela, he'd be a type of player that would suit Fulham's style of play. He can pick up the ball, he can beat players, he can take it down the line, cut inside, whip a ball in, which is everything Fulham need to allow Mitrovic to thrive. He opens up the space, people will be dragged towards Lamela, and it would leave space open for Aleksandar Mitrovic to score. So I think they could get Eric Lamela from Sevilla for relatively cheap because of their financial struggles, and he would be the player I'd go for that position in that Fulham team. Moving on to the team that's probably done the most business so far in the transfer window, other than potentially Arsenal, and that's Liverpool. They've already bought in 2 midfielders in Szoboszlai and McAllister. Looks like they could be bringing in 1 or 2 more, but I don't want to see them buy another midfielder. I think if they did move Trent to that midfield position, that right centre mid position, which is more attacking, don't have to really worry about defending as much, he would thrive, the team would thrive. And I think if they went and bought a natural right back, that the team would be even better and could potentially challenge for the league off the back of that. And I think that they could take advantage, same with Fulham, of Sevilla's financial situation, and they could go and pinch Montiel from Sevilla. World Cup winning right back, could link up with McAllister, can obviously score a penalty, done so for Sevilla, done so for Argentina in the World Cup final. So he's dependable, he's a very good defender, vastly experienced, and I think if Montiel came into that team, still has the capabilities to attack. He can defend, but he can still get forward, which is one of Liverpool's strengths. They like the wing backs to attack, and if they brought Montiel in, I think it would be a great addition and would, along with those midfielders, elevate Liverpool back towards a title charge for next season. Now we move on to Luton. Luton coming up was a surprise to most people, and having not watched that much Championship football this last season, I didn't really know what type of player Luton would need in order to be competitive in the Premier League this season. People, you could say, yeah, they need a solid centre-half, they need a good goal scorer, but one thing that did stick out to me when reviewing the stats from that season for Luton were that in the top 10 of the Championship, they were in fact the second lowest scorers in the Championship. So if you're the second lowest scorers in the top 10 in the Championship, it spells trouble when you move up to the elite level of the Premier League. So I think that they spent 1.5 million last year and they got promoted, which is brilliant. They've made so much money getting promoted, and I think their expectations won't be too high. So I think that they'll be sniffing around top Championship strikers, somebody that can maybe improve, or relegated strikers from the Premier League. And relegated Premier League strikers is what I've gone for. Now, I couldn't pinpoint one because they're two quite different players, obviously, and it depends on budget. But one of the two, of either Che Adams from Southampton, you know, done it for years in the Prem, still quite young, and I think you do really well, or Kelechi Iheanacho from Leicester. If they could pick either one of those two up, I think Che Adams would be a little bit cheaper than Iheanacho. So Che Adams would probably be the preferred choice, and if they picked any of them up, proven Premier League experience, either one of those two would improve hopefully the goal scoring for Luton in the upcoming season. Now, moving on to the Premier League champions Manchester City, they have a star-studded squad already. They've had a couple of people leave. Gundogan has left, Bernardo Silva's reportedly wanting to leave, but they've brought in Kovacic to replace Gundogan, and we can't speculate whether Bernardo Silva's going to leave, but there is obviously one position where they need that standout player. Ake done a very, very good job there last season, but I think they do need an attacking left back, and I think if they brought in Dimarco from Inter Milan, he would provide that. He's a very, very good attacking fullback, and obviously playing them in the Champions League final, Pep would have got a good look at how good Dimarco was, and I think he would be the player to come in and maintain Man City's dominance at the top. I'm not saying if they, a left back would be the difference, but it would make them more stable. I know the way they play, John Stones moves into a defensive mid role, but with Dimarco in there, it gives them the option to have that versatility within the team. Okay, moving on to Manchester United. Manchester United, it's quite a weird situation there at the moment, with fans wanting the owners out, the owners potentially selling, albeit they've dragged it out for too long now. It's been around 8 months since they announced that they wanted to sell, and I think that's holding Manchester United back in transfers. They're in talks with Onana now. They've allowed De Gea to move on, but I done this on the basis that obviously David De Gea was staying, and he could be there for at least another season, allow that takeover to be completed, and then with the new ownership, they could obviously improve the goalkeeping situation then, because ultimately, even though he's made a few mistakes, I don't think he's a bad goalkeeper. He's an excellent shot stopper, not the best with his feet, but if Manchester United were allowing a season where it's kind of a transition of ownership before the big spenders come in and they're allowed to go wild, so I've settled. I settled on like a number 9. They need that number 9. They bought Weghorst in January. He wasn't the player. He was mainly useless. So I think they do need that number 9 more, the most out of every position. Even I'd renew De Gea's contract if you had to give me a choice between a number 9 and renewing De Gea's contract, or no number 9 but they get another goalkeeper in. I'm choosing the number 9 with David De Gea for a season every day of the week, because obviously the number 9 gets you goals. You're not that heavily reliant on Marcus Rashford. Jadon Sancho hasn't really done it for you. Neither is Anthony. They've all come in for big money and haven't performed. It doesn't look like Martial's going to stay much longer. He's been there for many years now and hasn't really lived up to any sort of hype. So I think that a number 9 is in order for Manchester United. There's been obviously A lot of talk about Harry Kane. That doesn't look like it's going to materialise, mainly due to, like I said, the financial situation or the confusion now at Manchester United. I don't think they're willing to splash out 100 mil on Harry Kane while this takeover is being finalised. So I think that I've settled on 2 players. If Manchester United want to buy for the future, I know there's been a lot of talk about Højlund from Atalanta. I haven't really seen much of him, to be fair, but I think I found a gem in Loïs Openda from Lyon in Ligue 1. He had a very good season for Lyon, who had a very good finish in Ligue 1 last season, and I think at 23 years of age, if they were to buy for the future, Loïs Openda would be a great addition. Very fast, able to play on that counter attack, which Manchester United love, and I think has the ability to go on and improve again at a brilliant club like Manchester United, who have a history of making players great. Not so much in recent years, but especially under the Sir Alex days, he'd improve everybody. The history is improving. I wouldn't say average players, but making very good players spectacular. And I think with Ten Hag coming in, he could potentially do that with Loïs Openda if they were to go down that route. If they wanted a ready-made striker, there isn't that many on the market at the minute. So I'd probably go with Lautaro Martinez from Inter Milan. I know he's their captain, but obviously money talks, right? And again, it's a bit of confusion with Manchester United, but if he was around the 60-70 million mark, I think they could get him. I wouldn't pay any more than that, but he is that ready-made striker for Manchester United. He can hold the ball up, he can bring other players into play, and I think he would be well suited to Manchester United should they want to go and purchase him as, like I said, that ready-made attacker to go straight into that team and give them the best chance of that highest place finish for next season, as well as perform at a high level in Europe. Obviously they got those Champions League games coming up, so they need a number 9. It's imperative for them, being in 2 prestigious, or say a prestigious competition in the Champions League, and hopefully for United fans go in for that Premier League then next season. Right, on to Newcastle. Newcastle are the one of the power spenders now of the Premier League. So we was talking about Newcastle maybe picking up a free transfer or somebody on loan. Those days are now long gone, and so you're looking at potentially top European talents now, especially with European football, Champions League football for Newcastle. So I've had a look through, and they were looking at James Maddison for so long, and they really want that attacking midfielder. I don't think Tonali is quite that player. I think he's more of a box-to-box midfielder. So I still think an attacking midfielder is needed for Newcastle, and I've settled on Gabri Veiga from Celta Vigo. Obviously had a very good season at Celta Vigo last season, and I think if he came into that Newcastle team, I think his release clause is something like 40 million euros. Obviously they can easily afford it, and he come in. He's quite young. He's breaking into the Spanish national side, and he would be a very good addition to that Newcastle team, who, if they get the right players under Eddie Howe, they could have a very good season again next season. Okay, these next 3 teams I'm going to do all in one segment. That's Forest, Sheffield United and Spurs, because I think they all need the same type of player, and that's a goalkeeper. I know Spurs have signed a goalkeeper recently, but you're talking about a team that needs to get back into Champions League football, needs to, ultimately win a trophy. And I don't think that the goalkeeper that they've brought in is going to be good enough for that. So we're going to start off with Forest. I don't think that getting Dean Henderson back would be a benefit to them. I think they've let Keylor Navas and Dean Henderson leave at the end of this last season, so they obviously need a goalkeeper to come in. And I think if they went and got Livakovic, the Croatian goalkeeper, he'd be a great addition to that Forest side. We've seen in the Nations League final, where they narrowly lost on penalties to Spain, he's still doing it at a very good international level. He's a very good quality goalkeeper. Still only 28, has years left on his side. So I think if he went to if he wanted the lure of the Premier League, Nottingham Forest could put in a bid and they could prize him away from his parent club. Now, moving on to Sheffield United, I think this is the club that should come in for Dean Henderson. Obviously, he was on loan there before. He knows the club and he had a very good time at Sheffield United when he was there. So I think Sheffield United should come back in for Dean Henderson, and we all know his qualities at the Premier League level, and he would be a very good shot stopper for Sheffield United. Moving on to Spurs, like I've just talked about, they've signed a goalkeeper, but I don't think he'll be at the quality required. I don't think he'd be better than Hugo Lloris would be. So if they were gonna instead sign him, I'd have just kept Hugo Lloris for maybe another season. So I do think that they should push for David Raya. I know that Brentford want a 40 million fee, which is a lot for a goalkeeper, but he does, he had the highest save percentage in the entirety of the Premier League last season, and I think, that is the type of stats that you need to be looking at when buying a goalkeeper, and I think David Raya would, be up to that quality that would give, I'd say, a not so competent back four, back five. They haven't got the confidence at the moment. I think if they had David Raya behind, it would give them a boost in confidence to allow them to go on a run for next season, and hopefully for Spurs fans, get back into those European places. Okay, on to the penultimate team, and that is West Ham. Obviously, West Ham have come to the realisation that they are losing Declan Rice and will need to look for his replacement. Now, I've gone for another relegated player, and that would be Wilfred Ndidi. I think he's not as much as an 8, but more of a 6, but I think he'd be a great addition to that West Ham team, because if Wilfred Ndidi can stay fit, he could potentially be one of the best holding midfielders in the Premier League, who, Fabinho's on that downward spiral, N'Golo Kante's left, Casemiro's not getting any younger, so it's, Rodri and Casemiro are kind of up there at the minute as the best. So Ndidi, could come in and he could ruffle some feathers, and he, if he goes on a run and he can stay fit, he could be a dangerous player, and he could thrive in that West Ham team, who, again, I don't see being anywhere near the relegation zone. Ultimately, they're losing their captain, but I think if they invest that money wisely, and they should be fine for the upcoming season. But they do need that midfielder to come in to replace, and I think Ndidi would be a great addition for West Ham. Okay, on to the last team that in the Premier League, and that is Wolves. One of the shock moves to Saudi happened at Wolves, and that was Ruben Neves, at the prime age of 26, moving from Wolves to Saudi Arabia for a club record selling fee. And I think that they don't need to spend a lot in order to get a player of similar, not so much similar quality, but I think if they were market savvy, they could pick up a really good player for a fraction of the price in which they were sold for, because it's a dangerous time for Wolves at the moment. They're not really scoring enough goals, they're leaking a few goals. The goalkeeper in Jose Sa is solid. He was a main reason why scorelines were so low last season. With their scoring troubles, he kind of bailed them out a few times. So I think that if I was Wolves, I wouldn't be spending, unless they're proper going to go for it, I wouldn't be spending 40, 50, 60 million on a midfielder to replace Ruben Neves. I'd maybe spend 20, 25 mil and go and get Dewsbury Hall from Leicester. I think that he, in some aspects, he's displayed similar talents to Ruben Neves. Ruben Neves has that goal scoring knack where he can just hit them from outside the area and it can go in, which Dewsbury Hall kind of don't. But in terms of link-up play, energy, and stuff like that, he has the same similar qualities. And at the age of 24, I think he's a good enough player to stay in the Premier League. And if he moved to Wolves, he could improve at Wolves, and he hopefully keep them in the Premier League next season, because I do think it could be a struggle for Wolves, seeing their best player move to Saudi. How they go about that is an unknown, so I think it could be a rough season for Wolves fans next season. Okay, so that's the end of this video. If you liked or disliked any of my opinions, any of the players I chose for the clubs, if I decided to take a player from your club to go to another club, let me know. Explain why he shouldn't go to that club. If you think I picked the player which it was a good selection for your club, again, let me know. If you think there's a different player that could improve in another area, again, just put it in the comment section. And if you like this video, just like the video, subscribe if you want to see more content, and I will obviously it's a bit slow at the moment. There will be some more transfer news type videos coming out soon, but we're just ramping up, waiting for the new season where videos can then come thick and fast, and hopefully in the upcoming season this channel can start to thrive. And yeah, so again, if you like this video, like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers.